Right. Well, welcome everybody. I think we got some people joining us here. We're going to wait just a second and as people pop on. So, yeah, welcome to the second day of Farm to Fork, second Tuesday. We are excited to have you today on this very topical day where we are going to delve into how COVID-19 is affecting and has affected different organizations that are related to our food system in the West Central region. We are all reeling from the last year. I think there's a lot to process. We will continue to have these conversations. We will continue to talk to each other about how we, can deal with disasters like this when they come around. So this panel is meant to really highlight a couple of organizations in the region that stepped up to the plate and saw need and issue and really adapted to that. My name is Katie Nixon. I am the Food Systems Director at West Central Missouri Community Action Agency. Our food systems program, along with the folks at New Growth and some other folks at West Central, band together every year to put on this Farm to Fork Summit. This is our third annual, so we're really excited to have everybody. Unfortunately, it's a little different this year virtually, but we're making the most out of it, and I think people are maybe a little happy not to be traveling on a day like today. So my background is in farming and food systems. I love working with farmers. I love working in the food system. It's very dynamic, and we have a lot to work on. West Central is rich in farmland. It's rich in a lot of resources, rich in farmers, rich in people who care. And we're all working hard. And when we can work together, we can make a big difference for everyone. My panel today are some of those difference makers, people who really work hard every day to make the world a better place, or at least their own corner of the world. I know the pandemic put a lot of pressure on all of us to understand where our work lies and where we can help. In our region, we have a lot of disturbing numbers already before pandemic. We have almost 20% food insecurity for our children, where they're not getting their meals necessarily every day unless they're going to school. And we saw them not going to school. And so how do we help those families and those kids get access? Our farmers, some of them depend on a lot of wholesale production, and they saw that market disappear overnight. We have ranchers, livestock farmers who saw they didn't have anywhere to process their meat. We had a lot of people in unemployment, and they were looking for where they're going to get food for their families, and we helped them find those places. So with that, I am going to let our panelists introduce themselves, and we're going to go around the horn here. I'm going to call on everybody so we don't have to talk over each other in the infamous Zoom call. And I'll probably have to say you're on mute a couple times or mute yourself, and that's okay. That's par for the course right now. So Teresa Kelly, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Teresa Kelly, and I'm the Operations Director for the Kansas City Food Hub. We serve the wholesale and middle market, or did before 2020, primarily as a wholesale food aggregator and distributor. My background is in farming, and food policy work and food systems work. I've also served as an elected official, so I can bring that rare skill set to the table in building our business. I'm really happy to be here to talk about what we learned last year.
Thank you, Teresa. All right, Rachel, I'm going to go to you.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Rachel McGinnis-Millsap. I work with Casey Healthy Kids, and we're a nonprofit agency that works on both sides of the state line and sticks to the greater KC Metro for county stuff that we do. We have a policy side and a program side. And just to be very brief, our policy side has the Greater KC Food Policy Coalition that you might be aware of. We also work with Kansas Alliance for Wellness and have taken that over, and that's statewide network and policy stuff for making sure that food and farm and all that stuff gets a equitable food system. Sorry about that. And we have healthy communities advocacy for that as well. Our programs, which is what we'll be talking about most today, is where I reside, and I'm the Farm to Institution Director for Casey Healthy Kids there. We have Champions for Health, local food, and that's where I'm at, and also mental health. So our target populations are anywhere K through 12, early childhood education, and really just any eater, farmer, anything like that. We do a lot of stuff in the community, a lot of systemic change. My background is plant science and then social work. So that really ties together a lot of stuff that we do. And Casey Healthy Kids advances the health and well-being of children and families through community-driven initiatives and advocacy where they live, learn, work, and play. So we'll talk about more of that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, Amy.
Hi. I'm not very good at this tech stuff. We'll give it a shot. I'm Amy Zumalt. My husband and I, Jim, and I own Flavor Market, which is our newest venture. We, before that, were the owners and operators of Red Ridge Farms, a certified organic produce farm. But as we have matured and really focused on listening to our customers and pivoting each year to what our customers say that they want, we now own a brick and mortar farmers market store where we work with about 22 different farms. And we've gone from doing selling at farmers market mainly to adding CSAs to cutting back on CSAs and focusing more on restaurants, wholesale, and now we do tons of deliveries and have people walk in our store.
Great, thank you. All right, Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kyle Vickers. I am a farmer, first of all, and primarily beef cattle. We do corn and soybeans as well. But our market was disrupted last year, just on like everybody else. The whole livestock complex just got completely messed up. So that was a personal effect. In the meantime, I'm the chairman of the board, I guess you'd say, of a group that we formed about we started about a year ago. We got grants from the Missouri Department of Agriculture, the MASBA program, to do a feasibility study on a meat processing plant. We just got word that we have the second round of that. First round was feasibility study. Second round is going to be marketing and some other issues. And so we've been working for a while. Our grant was actually available the 1st of August, and COVID got pretty hot in Nevada. So we're really struggling with having group meetings where we all get together and work things out. But anyway, our goal is to put some sort of small meat processing plant in the Vernon County, Nevada area. And part of our discussion is that we found out that there's lots of fruit, produce, etc., being grown in our area. And so we're wondering if we can translate that into marketing into the metropolitan areas, primarily Kansas City. We're about 2 hours south of Kansas City, but also looking at Springfield and Joplin areas. And so that's part of our marketing study, is to try to figure out what markets are available for primarily beef. Most of us are beef producers, very few independent hog producers left around. But we are finding out there's a market for things like lamb and goat, as well as pork. So we're in the study phase of all that right now and trying to figure out what our next round is.
Sure, thank you, Kyle. All right, Dawn. You're muted.
Start with the unmute button. My name is Dawn McDonald. I'm the Community Initiatives Coordinator. I'm in Cass and Vernon County, or Cass and Henry, sorry. I've been talking about Vernon all day today too. And I currently am managing the Raymore Food Pantry. We've been working with Kansas City Food Hub on getting some of the fresh local produce and meat from our local growers through a CARES Act fund that we've got or had received. I think that's all I got.
All right. Well, we'll hear more from you in a minute. And Dawn works for West Central Missouri Community Action Agency there in Raymore, and then occasionally in Appleton City, coming down there to the central office. So we're going to go around the horn again, and I'm going to want a little more specifics from you about how COVID affected your operations of your organization. So if you could elaborate on, some of the pivots that you might have had to make if you're serving other farmers, how those farmers also were affected, and subsequently your business, and then of course your clients and how they were affected. And again, I will say that for all those people watching this today, each one of our speakers on this panel today will have a session after this where they're going to go into a lot more detail about the things that they're doing. But I'm going to start with Teresa again, and if you want to start us off, you've got at least 5 minutes, and you can go over if you want.
Don't ever give me permission to do that. So for me, I think pivot is word of the year for 2020, especially in our food system world, because all of us have had to redirect or change direction through COVID. We all watched as the conventional supply chain broke, leaving food vendors and eaters feeling stranded if they weren't actually stranded. In the local food system, we had the capacity and the flexibility to pivot from business as usual to innovative delivery of local food to our markets to feed people and to help our farmers move product, a lot of which they'd already planned for and even planted. So I was doing sales reports for projections for 2021, and I pulled up our annual sales, and on March 15th, all of our wholesale orders canceled, and our prospective sales went from normal to zero. So that was quite a shock. I joined the hub in May, but the staff, Alicia Ellingsworth and Katie and others, Amy was part of that team that just spun on a dime and were able to create a direct sale program to help move produce. So the creative thinking and the community relationships is what saved our farmers and our system this year. We have deep relationships throughout our region that let us be nimble in our response and find outlets for our produce. Our farmer members and staff were able to shift to a direct sale through subscription neighborhood farm share boxes. So we were taking our farmers' produce, doing the usual aggregation route to a central location, one of our sub-hubs. We operate on a sub-hub model. And then having a packing line and then distributing up to 400 boxes, depending on who we were delivering to each week. Each neighborhood signed up at least 10 people, and they did 10-week sessions. So we were actually able to move more produce sooner than we normally did. Tomato season usually ushers in the high season for local produce. So we were able to get greens and other early produce out into the marketplace. Our farmers, a lot of them pivoted as well to direct sales. And I don't know of any CSA that wasn't full last year. So we aggregated from our members as usual. And with the repacking and distribution, ended up with a giant logistical spaghetti bowl, as we used to call the highway interchanges in Texas. So it was quite challenging. We have 20 member farmers, and I think all of them pitched in different ways. We had boxes going out to those individuals and to housing complexes, and we still had a few wholesale accounts that stuck with us. So we were fortunate there. Our farmers moved more food earlier, as I said, and that helped solidify our partnerships in the community. One silver lining of the pandemic was the ability for local agencies to purchase local food for distribution through COVID funding, relief funding. So instead of taking a break this winter, we are emptying our warehouses and barns and shelf-stable items and storage crops and proteins like never before, because everyone was still being able to move into that system for relief for hungry people. Over the course of the year, we added 4 staff. 2 of those were part-time. We added 4 new member farmers to help the supply side of our local food. So really in the end, right now, In the aftermath, we're refining our systems and distribution routes. We're really looking at the numbers and seeing what's viable and what isn't, because while our sales went through the roof, so did our operating expenses. So we are really looking at all of those lessons and offering gratitude to all of our partnerships and our farmers and our eaters, which without all of the team, we couldn't have responded to this crisis in the way we did. Thank you.
You stayed under 5 minutes.
Yay!
All right, Rachel, I'm going to toss the ball to you.
All right. Well, I'm gonna start broad and then narrow down to how it impacted farm to institution. But as an agency, Case Healthy Kid had a lot of setbacks. Our target populations, which I would argue to say was pretty much everybody from a policy standpoint and program standpoint, went through major crisis. So we had to regroup and look at our existing programming and our existing policy, and not only make it virtual, but figure out if that's still the best fit for what the community needed and do it really quick. We also had to, project the future and figure out what we needed 3 to 6 months from the time that things, hit a wall to what was resonating with our funders. Case Healthy Kids restructured. We lost 3 positions. And so a lot of us had to take on different programs that were, Healthy Kids Bright Futures is a ECE program. The Farm to Institution programming was dabbling, getting into the ECEs, the Early Childhood Education Centers. And, they were an essential business that was really struggling right around when the pandemic hit. And so we just kept our ear to the ground. Our Farm to Institution programming, let me back up and say everybody at the agency really pivoted and adapted and all those buzzwords, but we also had to have major faith and trust that our partners, our powerful partnerships, were going to, one, do what they said they were going to do. There was lots of stuff happening, lots of funding that was last minute that different people were going after. And so honing in and staying together on that and being upfront and honest with everybody about what was happening helped us to kind of find our niche. Farm to Institution went from not being able to get any funding for any local food to having crisis funds like COVID and CARES that paid for food for CSAs and wholesale. So we were able to really shift fast and extend all of our grants that gave us that possibility, and kind of read the room with our K through 12 and our school districts. We had to let them be for a little bit. They were creating new models of food distribution in like 4 weeks time. So we had to, pivot and try to help our ECEs where they were. The stuff that they were saying was they couldn't get enough milk for their sites because of all the restrictions put on ordering food, or there was no fruit and vegetables that they could get for snacks and lunches. So we got that for a lot of our new partners with wholesale. So we also partnered with KC Food Hub. It was real early on that you guys started talking about those neighborhood boxes. And so what we did was created a model where it would make it enticing to get us on the delivery route. So, that took 1 to 3 months to get that going. And then that's where that hope and that faith came in, is if we have all this funding and we need to get that food out to places, is our local food system going to help us get there? Because we are not an aggregator. We also have a split log farm, which is a urban farm in KCK. We partner with Community Housing of Wyandotte County to implement and operate that farm. The CSAs and the need for that skyrocketed, where we needed to get more food out to the farm because we couldn't grow enough to get out to the community. Another adjustment was we relied a lot on our systems to get the word out. So we relied on our K through 12s and our ECEs to get the word out to their families. And so not that we were once removed, but some of our programming allowed for us to funnel resources to these folks. Well, that all shifted when stuff became virtual and went to, stuff was closed down. So we had to meet people where they were in the community, try to figure out how we were going to connect with them there. So we incorporated things like a Facebook group for farm to families. Our staff really stepped up to try to influence our communities and help them get tapped into stuff when we couldn't go into the school building or couldn't go into our ECEs. We dabbled in delivery. We had some Our community navigator and farm manager out at Splitlog, Ashley Meek and Luis Colon, helped with getting food out to over hundreds of families for ECEs, in addition to what we did with the neighborhood shares at the food hub. So we became not a connector of resources, but a provider of resources. I know a lot of us had to do that. And in the food world, that's daunting. We know these issues with delivery and how much it costs. And, you know, all the policies with COVID impacted that. So we just dove right in and tried to get in the mix as best we could. And then we got past capacity and had to bring in partners. Let's see. How am I doing on time? Am I at 5 minutes?
Are at 5 minutes, but if you had anything else to wrap up, you're welcome to do that.
I
We
just
can come
have a
back to
couple
you
more.
too.
Okay, yeah.
Sure, go
I
for
just
it.
had a couple more. You know, I already talked a little bit about this, but we did expand programs. We, you know, went a lot broader than we planned to in 2020. We just had to speed things up. So our partners, I already mentioned a few of them, but there's a ton more, and you'll find out more in the breakout session about how reliant we are on strong partnerships in the local food system. But, you know, we just had to kind of hit the ground running and hope it worked out. So, and I think a lot of us did that. And through we had probably, I think now 4 different funding sources that provided over $20,000 to $30,000 for the local food system. And that's just food costs. So that is not something that has resonated with funders before. And we saw that the direction was going that way. And we just had to do it because it helped to go directly into the food system. So that, in addition to the time that it helped cover for our staff, helped us with sustainability and keep people in jobs. It helped the people we were providing the CSAs and wholesale to keep people fed. And, you know, ultimately it increased the amount of local food eaters we'll have. So, I mean, that's the benefit, is that hopefully once you try local eggs and you try local food, you're not going to go back. So we're jumping on that opportunity too. Okay. More to come.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. All right, Amy.
When we first started putting conversations to what was happening with COVID, for us, my husband and I, we were really worried about keeping our staff paid. We thought people weren't going to come to our store. We were going to have to really pivot hard or just shut down. We just didn't know. We were just listening to all the concern about businesses closing, but because we're considered an essential business, we had some real big lulls. But then once people started realizing that our store was a lot safer place to come shop than the box stores, and just a little bit about our store, we have a brick and mortar store. We're a 1.5 miles east of Powell Gardens, if people know where that is, off 50 on 50 highway. We're really in the middle of nowhere. So when somebody is driving by our store needing essentials, they've got another 15 minutes to go before they get to a Walmart, and probably another 25 minutes before they get to something like a Price Chopper. So we have an electronic sign out front. We use that to our advantage. We did a big old egg sale. We told our egg guy, we'll take every egg you've got. We need to let people know that we exist. And that really worked. People started rolling in and they're like, oh my gosh, I never would have ever thought to stop here. So COVID actually kind of became our friend, because the community realized they needed to support community, and it really kind of turned on the faucet. People would pull up to the store, and whereas before it was rare when we had 3 cars in our parking lot, it became the norm, and people would actually take turns coming in. So the in-store people, it actually just kind of flowed and worked out. We had a ton of people, though, who we weren't able to serve because the farmers markets weren't open. And we've been selling at farmers markets since day one. And Lee Summit canceled. Gosh, I don't think the farmers markets opened until June, I think. Maybe wrong on that, but usually they open the second week of April. So there were a lot of people looking for food. So we started doing parking lot deliveries. It forced us to get our website to where people could order. At first, I was just taking texts and emails and then sending people invoiced Square statements. Oh my gosh, I spent hours doing that. finally we got our online store going. We use, like I said, we use Deluxe, and at first we were combining it with Square. Now we combine it with Stripe. And lot of kinks to work out of doing that, never having done that before, and packing all those individualized bags. But we've gotten pretty good at that. And at our heyday, we were packing about 65 unique bags on Friday to deliver on Saturday. Right now, we still are getting about 20 unique bags a week to pack and taking them in. So that's, and actually a year ago in January, we weren't doing that at all. So that's sales we didn't have. Wholesale also looks a lot different. We were courting a lot of like coffee shops for our products. We make a lot of bakery goods. We make a lot of like small soups, things that are one serving type items. So we were courting coffee shops to carry our products. Well, coffee shops shut down. We had 3 new restaurants that were wanting to carry our bread, our pizza crust, buy produce from us. They're still open, but they're struggling. So orders that they had planned to have rolling into us weekly were rolling in about every 6 weeks. So that was a struggle too. But then the hub started needing more items. The neighborhood farm share was using bread. KC Healthy Kids has placed some big orders that used our food. FEI, Food Equality Initiative, called and said, we've got to feed people bread. Can you get us gluten-free bread in a decent amount? So we were making 600 loaves of gluten-free bread, May, June, July, and August, I think, maybe September, before their funding changed. So that was awesome. What else is interesting though is we had a lot of people reach out to us seeing if we could help them. Like OPA, I've been trying to get into work with OPA for years. OPA reached out to me and said, hey, let's sit down and talk. That still hasn't gone anywhere, but at least the door got opened during this experience. Let's see what else. Oh, was interesting. Cisco salesman walked in my door and said that he usually works with 25 restaurant accounts. He was down to 3 of them still ordering. So he was looking for new clients. And I said, the only thing really I'd be interested would be paper goods and plastic goods. And I was kind of surprised that he would even walk in my door, but that actually has saved me a lot of time because Cisco delivers now all my cartons and things like that, which I was driving all over town to get the best price here and there for stuff like that. Let's see, what's my notes here? Farmers market. So Lee Summit was closed for us for several weeks, I think a couple of months. When they did open, sales were horrible because it was a drive-through market with very limited sales. It was the best they could do. So I'm not, they were working with what the county would let them do, but that drive-through market was difficult. So, and then when they went to a normal market, the rules for Jackson County was that there had to be 30 feet between booths. So we had a lot of elderly in our community who couldn't walk a farmer's market that big. In fact, I believe the ambulance came 3 times this summer to pick up people who had collapsed at the farmer's market because the booths were so far apart and these people just could not walk. So we started getting all of those people signed up to our parking lot deliveries, and they would pull up. We'd pull up at a parking lot. They would pull up. They'd pop their trunk. We'd put the food in their trunk, and they were so grateful. And so that really worked out well. Meanwhile, at the store, we were selling out of eggs and beef like crazy. We have a really good guy, grass-fed beef guy that was. I'd say last year we were getting a half a beef, maybe once a month. I mean, we just weren't selling much beef at all. And we're up to, I'm not sure, I'd have to go look, 6 or 8 animals for this year. So that's a huge change for us. Eggs, I think we've sold out. I think we've had 3 days this year where we didn't have eggs. So we just made a point of making sure that we had things that would bring customers in. And those 2 categories, we realize we have to keep that stocked for sure. I don't know what else. a lot of people in our community just recognized that our store was a lot safer. We kept our doors open all summer. We kept our windows open. We talked to people about our store having just really small crowds coming in. We made a point of publicly sanitizing things and letting people know that we were doing everything we could to stay clean and to keep them comfortable. And we just really gained a lot of people because of that, being a safe place to shop. We gave out tons of cooking advice. People would walk in, they'd say, "Oh my gosh, I've never cooked a meatloaf in my life, you know, blah, blah, blah." They'd have all these things that they wanted to cook, had never cooked. So we started doing some cooking advice emails to help people use things. I've had more people click on our recipes that we attached to our emails this year and purchase those ingredients than ever before. So that was an interesting little change. We also realized that just because I couldn't provide local yeast, cream, butter, or seasoning, that people would walk in the door and saying, "I know you guys don't carry local butter, but I just need a package of butter." So we got to where we were trying to carry some of those staples that people were looking for and that were out of at other places. Good enough.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Yeah.
Mhm.
You guys are busy, very busy. All right. Thank you so much. Kyle.
Okay, let me look at a big picture first. I know a lot of the people on the panel are kind of produce and so on, but the big picture in the livestock business over a long period of time, 40 or 50 years, the livestock business has just continued to concentrate and into very, very few hands. And part of that is everything is on a timeline. When chickens, when they need more chickens, they're really only about 40 or 50 days out from putting a chicken from hatching an egg into a grocery store. A little more time, but the same thing is certainly true in the pork business. If you're raising hogs for a big contractor, you know almost exactly when a pig when a sow is bred, when that pig is going to be going to market. It's all fine tuned. Beef business a little less so, but still, if you're killing a kill line somewhere out in Kansas that's killing 7,000 a day, you know where those cattle are coming from. So when the pandemic hit, as it first started out, everything just got blown up. The plants had a lot of sick people. The first one I think was Smithfield plant in Sioux Falls, and things just got totally disrupted. So all that back channel planning we still don't know yet. I don't think we know exactly what the results of that were, because people were killing little pigs and smaller pigs because they had no place to take the next step into a finishing plant. And we know that in some cases, hogs ready to go to market were slaughtered and buried. Awful, terrible thing for many reasons. But even to the fact that those sows that would be bred a month before the pig would eventually go to processing, all that has been disrupted. And we're just at about a year from that point. So we know that things were terribly disrupted. Now, what's going to be the result of that? Well, it's interesting because Tom Vilsack is on his second term. I don't think there's ever been a Secretary of Agriculture that's been out and then come back. He's on his second term, and in his confirmation hearings, he was saying we need to do something about slaughter capacity. We need to support smaller processors, et cetera. And you've got congressmen and senators that are saying, hey, let's look at this concentration of our livestock industry into so few hands that a problem can totally disrupt the whole food chain and break the markets. One of the things that happened in that whole deal was the price for live animals dropped. Guess what? Everybody was then short of meat and desperate for meat, and some stores were running out of meat. So the processors had the highest margins in some cases, the highest margins they'd ever had between farmer to retail. So everybody is trying to figure out, is this a long-term thing? Is this something that was related to COVID? What's going to happen? Even in the state of Missouri, the governor and the legislature has taken a lot of CARES money and put it out to smaller processors, the kind of county level, city level processing plants that we're all familiar with. And there was just a new round of money that went out where a medium-sized county level processor got up to $200,000 to improve their processing or equipment or add freezer space and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of government support right now behind making some significant changes in the way that our livestock business is carried out. Now, this has taken quite a few decades to get to where we're at. How fast is it going to change? Will it really change? There's just tremendous power in those big meat processors that is really hard to disrupt. And they realize that any small processor is really a threat to their business. So the big picture is really very uncertain as to what is going to happen. We know that in these plants, you've seen the headlines where they were really taking advantage of some people. I think the plant in Sioux Falls has 54 languages spoken in that plant. So you had the companies taking advantage of workers. You had them taking advantage of consumers. You had them taking advantage of farmers and ranchers. So it's it's a very complicated situation. And unfortunately, it's not just economics. The government and politics and enforcing law and so on and so forth is going to come into play. So what does that mean for a local processor? Well, that's a huge question for us. So we started looking at doing something in Vernon County before the pandemic. And a year ago in the fall, we had a small group. We agreed to ask the Department of Ag, it's MASDA, Missouri Associate or Small Business Development Authority. And so I knew there were grants available. And so we started planning to do that grant. We were having regular meetings. When it all hit, we didn't have any meetings. And my wife, Debbie, and my son, Ben, and I, in consultation with some of the other members, put together a grant application to do a feasibility study. We didn't get that till August. And then we had a few in-person meetings before COVID hit. And so we're really struggling to get together and have those kind of conversations that we need to have. We did go ahead as of the 1st of October. We applied for a grant. Keep in mind, we didn't get the first grant till August 1st, and October 1st is the next date. So the next step in that whole process is to look at marketing. So we just got awarded a new grant, and part of that is going to go to marketing study. Part of it is going to go to investigating waste disposal, because one of the real problems in these plants, especially the smaller plants, is waste disposal. And I'll come back to that. And then part of that is to find out in our community and the surrounding counties, how many people are willing to work with us. Are you going to bring two beef calves a year? Or are you going to bring 30 beef calves a year? So we kind of found out that there's a kind of a strategic wild ass guess, from a niche meat group that says you can build a $2 million plant, and the break even on that would be about 100 calves a month, 100 steers or finished animals a month in a beef plant. So we're trying to look at that and see, can we make it work? And one of the things that worries us is there's been expansion all around us. A new plant is going in just north of Butler, Missouri at Passaic. The plants Golden City and Lockwood are part of that expansion that the Department of Agriculture has helped finance. There's a small private plant just a few miles away in Cedar County. So we're trying to figure this out in the middle of all this uncertainty. Do we want to make further investments that could be expensive, and it could be an expensive lesson to get into this processing business? We don't know what the competition from the other small plants around us is going to be. And we don't know what the long run picture is. Before COVID hit, most of these plants were in a 3 to 6 month period where you had to make arrangements to have a couple of steers or a couple of pigs slaughtered. Nowadays, it's a year to 18 months. I just talked to somebody that made arrangements for 2 steers 18 months out. And we used to be able to get a steer fat or maybe have an injured steer that we could just run into a slaughterhouse locally and get slaughtered and bring the meat home. So we don't know what's going to happen. Is that a long range thing? In Nevada, you couldn't even buy a deep freeze. And I know a guy that went to Springfield and he brought home 6 deep freezes for he and his family. So we don't know what's going to continue. That really makes it very, very difficult to make planning, to make a major investment in a processing plant. Let me talk just a minute about the waste disposal. One of the problems is in this area, there is one company that does waste. They'll come to your plant, you pay them to take away your waste products. If they decide they don't like you or something's not right, then they can cut you off and you're out of business. So that's very, very concerning. That's one of the biggest problems. So we're going to look at that and maybe some alternative ways to handle that. The other headache that we see is labor and management for a plant. And probably management is the biggest issue because most of these plants that are successful have been in business a long time. They're family-run plants where a family has a big stake in it. It's been built up over a long period of time, and that we're not there. So where can we find a good manager that will be really committed to a long-run project and will make things work? And then workers could be a problem. We kind of think that there's going to be people available that are willing to, but it's not the most attractive job in the world. And so what would we have to pay to attract workers? Just about everybody, every business in Nevada says they would love to expand if they could find good qualified help. So that may also be a problem. So a lot of issues. We're still in the planning stage, and the COVID has even disrupted our planning because we can't get together and work these things out. But the livestock business in particular has just really been disrupted. We don't know the full effects and the long-term effects of that yet. So that's where we're at. We're looking at, can we sell directly to consumer? And I appreciated, I think it was Amy that said, you know, before it was a steer or 2, now it's 5 or 6. But getting rid of 100 steers a month, 20 a week could be a challenge. And so we're trying to figure all those things out, trying to make some plans. We hope to make some decisions this spring and summer.
Thank you, Kyle. So the interesting look too at the livestock industry is definitely heavily concentrated, and I think it's bipartisan, the concern about the heavily concentrated issues related to our livestock industry. All right, Dawn.
Hey, well, mine will be good and simple. I think as far as like the food pantry, I was just in the building at the beginning. We had 11 volunteers that pretty much did everything. And then when COVID hit, we had to shift gears rather quickly because they're, of course, typically they're usually retired, elderly, they have health problems. And then our offices were closed to the public. So we had to, on a dime, turn around, rethink how we were going to get this out. With us being in Cass County, the only TFAP program, it was very important that we were staying open as a lot of just the smaller pantries and things were closing. We tripled our numbers like inside the first week. I'd never seen the food pantry with absolutely nothing in there. And there wasn't a can on the shelf. There wasn't meat in the freezer. There was nothing. But I think we've continued like every week, like you have to change something constantly. What didn't work this week is not going to work. And as you keep progressing forward, it's gotten a lot simpler. When KC Food Hub kind of joined in, we were kind of having some issues with folks who are really wanting to get produce and things like that. Those are typically the things that if you don't have any money that you're going to skip. You're not going to buy the spaghetti squash if you don't know what to do with it or things like that. So I think like for us, like that was, even for me, that was an amazing experience because I've learned so much about local farming, different kinds of produce. I would look at invoices and think, why are they sending me acorns? And the girls at KC Food Hub would send us these amazing recipes. So in hindsight, I'm like, wait a minute, I've got to be able to teach these people how to do this. Well, if I cannot have contact, how am I going to teach them? So then we flip back again and you're switching gears again. And now we've implemented a bag that we're going to put in it, a recipe, your spaghetti squash and everything that you need to go with it. So that when you go home, you have a complete meal. So even for myself, I did not make spaghetti squash 6 months ago, but now I do, or turnips and things like that. And it's also like gotten them into doing a lot of actual cooking instead of all of this like processed and other things that are coming through. Trying to think of some other things that kind of talk. I mean, it was crazy learning how to do this where they're used to coming into the building and people are not having contact with the outside world. And when they see you, they want to touch, they want to talk, and they want to hug, and they want to, but revamping this to where we were maintaining our distance and not touching and not taking this paperwork and things like that was constantly like on the move. But I think they were very grateful that we continued to remain open as others were tapping out and giving up. We just kind of had to keep plugging along. KC Food Hub was like, those guys are just, I can't even express enough how amazing they were of like dealing with going ahead and taking on their orders and, hey, listen, we've got a bunch of this. What do you think? And then they would always come back with so if we're going to send you like all of this bean sprouts here, this is what to do with it. The other interesting thing that I found is that I'm not born and raised on a farm. I don't know anything about farming. I was go to the grocery store, pick it up and go home. It has changed my thought process as well about making sure that I myself am making sure that I go to these local farmers and things like that as my clients were coming through and recognizing like who produced the ground beef. Last month, did you know that the guy that I grew up with, that came from his farm? And then the next month it'd be somebody else going, hey, did you know that those eggs, like I knew, like when I grew up and over in here, like I grew up with those kids. So even like, I mean, it was just on and on and on of like how kind of cool this really kind of, this little project was.
That's awesome, Dawn. And it makes me think, you know, we talk about our local food system, and a lot of times we translate it into economic growth and economic activity because that's how a lot of our progress and a lot of our measurements are made in the United States, and especially in a capitalistic model, which is what we're in. And we sort of lose track of those personal relationships with the food, and that doesn't have an economic value put on it. And rightly so, like how do you put an economic value on it? But it has cultural value, it has community value, it has individual pride and ownership value when you know who it came from. So it's really special when we can help create those relationships that are beyond economic and just the bottom line of like, okay, we know this is good for the economy, but look at all these other things that come out of this. And that's kind of where I want to go with the conversation now is, you know, we have gone through this really challenging time, and it's been emotional and it's been stressful, and there's been a lot of things that we'll probably be glad to say goodbye to and leave behind once this pandemic is under control and we can kind of be in a little more of a normal space. But then there's also things that really we found out about ourselves and we found out about our organizations, and we really want to use those lessons. And I want to know from you guys, and I know there's probably lots of them, and I did ask you guys to narrow it down to one. So we're going around the horn here, and one of the lessons that you want to carry forward with you beyond the pandemic that came out of this new scramble for in this new world. So Teresa, let's start with you.
I think we're so resilient. You know, we lean on our relationships, we get through things together, and it builds a resiliency. Things don't seem so hard now going forward for me. And I hate going first because I'm going to think of all these daisy chain things as everybody talks. So I'm going to do ahead and say ditto to everything everyone else learned too, because I think we've all learned a lot of the same lessons in different flavors.
Well, since I put you on the first, lots of flavors from Flavor Market. Since I put you on the spot first, I'll come back to you and you can have the last word. How about that, Teresa?
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. All right, Rachel.
Well, I wrote, this one was big. This was a big ask, I felt. But I wrote down that people and institutions are resilient and resourceful, and we stepped up, and so did the communities that we serve. And those relationships are key, Teresa. I absolutely agree. And it helps us move this situation forward, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's ugly. It's key. Those relationships are huge. So that's what I'll take and move forward.
Nice. All right, Amy.
I think my one thing is respecting our customers, respecting what they need to get through what they need to feel good about where they are, which translates to a lot of listening. So we spend a lot of hours in our store just listening to people and just feeding that community, not just the food that they came in looking for, but feeding them because this might have been their one chance to get out in this week. And listening no matter what they're saying, whether I agree with what they're saying or not agreeing with what they're saying, whether it's health wise, political wise, whatever, but just showing them the respect that, hey, I care and I'm listening. And I think the more we showed that to people, the more they recognized how important it is to put their dollars into community, because hey, we can walk in there and she knows my name and she knows my problems and she knows everything about me. Whereas when I go to a box store, they don't. And I mean, I would take stories home to my family of, hey, you won't believe this person who walked in today and the story that they had to share with me. And that's a real sense of community for me. And I think that lesson will definitely hang in there.
That's really nice. And I wanted to point out that that's your store behind you right there. So folks, when they go in and visit you on Highway 50, that's what they're going to see on one of the walls is just a beautiful wall full of value-added products. So
I thought I
all right, Kyle.
for that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think, gosh, 25 years ago, I got to go roughly to Europe, and they talked about local food, slow food, whatever you want to call it. But their culture is much, much different than ours. And it's been slowly moving this way, and it kind of catches on maybe East and West Coast, but it's pretty darn slow to reach Middle America. My question is, has this really turned a corner? People are much more interested in local food, fresh food, food where they know a little bit about the history, how is it processed and so on. Have we really turned a corner? And I think to some degree we have, and whether or not that continues, I think is a big question. But I think to some degree we have really turned a corner in looking at our food system, and that is all the way to Congress and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to some local farmers market. I know our farmers markets that were open were as busy as they've ever been because people were saying, hey, this is a little different. We want to buy local. We want to buy fresh, and recognizing that where their food comes from is important.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. Dawn.
Wow. So everything that's been said above, and I have met some of the most amazing people through all of this that are battling right along with us. Like, we would have never probably have worked with the KC Food Hub group like this before if this hadn't have happened. And inside of the community, like listening to them come back and asking us, like, so how are you guys pulling this off when our clients are coming through going, well, where did you get this? Like, these are beautiful. And I can tell them, like, well, this is a partnership with like KC Food Hub. And like, I mean, they were pretty excited. Just because you're poor doesn't mean that you have to have the last leg like produce. I mean, and our clients were walking away feeling really like good about themselves.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, out of this whole deal, we have these wonderful things to learn from. And out of the chaos can come real positive change, but we have to work for it, and we have to intentionally ask for what we want and not expect that it will fall into place the way that we think it will. So there's still a lot of hard work ahead. If we do want, Kyle, if that's the change that we're hoping to see, you know, like you said, and I know you're doing this, we still got to put in the hard work to create the system that those consumers can lean on for what they want and what they need. And Teresa, since I promised you to have the last word, I'm going to let you have it. But before I do, you're going to come up with something very profound, I know. I just want to remind everybody that our breakout sessions will start at 4:15, and you can listen to more of what these wonderful people have to say, in addition to a few other panelists who will be on those calls. And then tonight, we are featuring the Farmers for America film, which will be a fantastic collection of stories in picture and of beginning farmers from across the region. So also we have an evaluation link, which I meant to have handy right now, but maybe we'll post it in Whova in the message board. And if you guys wouldn't mind going there and filling out the evaluation for Farm to Fork. And then of course we have one more day after this on the 16th, where we have some great speakers lined up for you. And then we end in a culmination with this cooking class. We'll be cooking an amazing bolognese and making homemade gnocchi. Yummy. So with that said, Teresa, send us out with something inspiring.
So all of us in the room around the table have been preaching about being disconnected from food and talking to people about reconnecting with their food. And little did we know that a pandemic would put it all on display for us and show everyone just how close they are and how far away they have been from their food.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much. We'll just, if you want to click, I think Patty posted that link there. So if you want to click on that link for evaluation, please go out there and let us know how you enjoyed and what new topics you want to learn. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we'll see you in about 15 minutes. Thank you.